Mark, thank you for taking some time to join us here on this Friday. Hope you had a great Thanksgiving. I know that you watch Broncos games all season long. Obviously, Drew Lock has had some ups and downs this season. What have you seen from him and how he's progressing here in his second year?
Obviously there's more on his plate, and I think you have to understand how hard this game is. We tend to oversimplify it, and there's this crazy juxtaposition of how simple the game is and yet how complicated it is. And when you look at Drew Lock as a young quarterback, we want answers immediately. And sometimes you get those answers immediately, and sometimes there's a process that goes through, getting those answers. And heck, we've seen it for 3 years with Garett Bolles, who, was struggled consistently for 3 years, and all of a sudden he's playing at a really high level. When I look at the systems that Drew Lock played in college, and the fact that he has had now 6 coordinators in 6 years, 4 in college and 2 here in Denver, that's a really hard transition because everything's different. He's still in that learning phase. And I think the biggest thing that you see that happens to Drew Lock is mechanically he just breaks down. And I think that comes with years of playing in the SEC and being able to have one receiver. And, it's funny because wide open in college is 2 yards or 3 yards, right? And you can be a little errant in a 2 or 3 yard window and still have a completion. And everybody thinks you're great. Wide open in the NFL is 14 inches. Like, that's wide open.
Yeah.
And you got to be able to hit that spot. The biggest thing about him when you're watching him is how he loses accuracy and arm talent energy because his front side flies open so much. And the only reason I know a lot about throwing mechanics is not because I played the position, is because I have lived with my son and coached my son for 30 years. Mm-hmm. So I've been at all those lessons and all those, throwing mechanics. And I talk to him about throwing mechanics all the time. And you can see the power leaks and the accuracy leaks based upon how Drew's feet operate. And those are things that are hard. I mean, you don't go through an off season with, and you don't have the OTAs, you're missing 1,500 reps, 2,000 reps. Those things have, they've got to be better, but that's a process like anything else is a process.
Yeah, we've heard him say even in college he would just backpedal and then fling it, and he knows that he can't do that at the NFL level too. I know you mentioned Garett Bolles there. As a former offensive lineman, when you study his tape, I mean, how do you explain the turnaround here?
Well, I think there's several things. I think one, he just seems to be more powerful. Just the strength at the point of contact has been a lot better. But even before that, his sets are so much better. There's a lot of different tools, that you have to have in your tool belt. Garrett's first 3 years, he took pretty much an identical set every single time. Now, if you don't think the defensive linemen are keying in on that, then you're foolish. So they knew exactly kind of where he would be in his set. And the set that he took, it was always step, step, turn. And so, you want to keep your shoulders as perpendicular to the line of scrimmage as you possibly can. And it does 2 things for you. One, it keeps your outside firm, but it also keeps your inside firm. And when you turn and open up, it creates a really short corner, and it also invites a guy to just jam you, bull rush you into the quarterback. And so he was giving up two areas that absolutely got his hips swung around, and then all of a sudden he's like on the side or behind a guy, and now you're forced to grab a guy and tackle him essentially. And it happened to him, gosh, almost like literally on every play. And so it was one of those things where, there's a reason he got called for holding 30 times in 3 years. And there's a reason where they could have called him a lot more than they called him, and he's rectified that. He has changed his sets. I think he has more familiarity with what they're trying to do, where his potential help is. So yeah, I give him a ton of credit because my patience isn't such that I'd be like, oh, he'll be okay. I'd be like, no, move on. Like let's move on. That's where I was. But I'll give the staff a lot of credit. I'll give Mike Munchak a lot of credit for being incredibly patient, and I'll give the organization a ton of credit. There was never a question about his athleticism. I mean, I watched him come out of college. He's the most gifted, like pound for pound, he's as good an athlete as anybody in the league. He's a freak show athlete. So I'm really proud of him, man. I'm really happy, and I know I'm probably publicly enemy number one at times because I'm one of the most vocal guys in the market. But I just tell it like I see it, and I'm fine to say, hey, man, I'm glad that he fixed it because he's playing at a really high level.
Yeah. No, it's been good to see this year. I know that one thing the Broncos did last week, and I'm assuming they'll like to do this moving forward, is get that running game going. Melvin Gordon, Phillip Lindsay both went over 80 yards last week, but this Saints defense, they don't like to give up the run.
Yeah, they're really good. There's no question. And last week was so unique from a game planning standpoint. And really, they brought back this 60s Packers sweep, if you will. Kind of a combination between G lead on the front side and pulling the bubble guy on the backside, whoever's uncovered on the backside, and attacking the outside lane or the inside lane, depending on how it was. Really all about reading what the defense was giving you, and it was unique. I mean, I was in my years in Washington, we were a real counter-heavy team, counter and power-heavy pull team. In my years here in Denver, we were a real zone team, so like that's kind of what we did. But the uniqueness of what Pat Shurmur and Mike Munchak put in the running game last week was really innovative, and like what's old has become new, and the execution of that's hard because you got to execute and you got to read that on the fly. You're pulling guard on the front side, your pullers on the back side, be it your center, be it your guard, or be it your left tackle, whoever was uncovered. It was really well constructed, and most importantly, it was well executed. It's hard to execute that. So I just was really impressed with what they were able to do. And now I think the Saints are a little bit different animal because they're not going to give you all that inside jam front and some of the things that the Dolphins did. And they're really good on the edge when it comes to setting edges, where the Dolphins played a little loose and fast on the edge. So I don't know that you'll see that same exact that same type of game. Everybody just thinks, okay, let's run that again because that was really effective. And that was a little bit more, I think, game plan specific to the Miami Dolphins. But we'll see exactly what they come up with this week.
I think the Saints haven't given up a 100-yard rusher in like 3 years or something like that. So,
yeah, it was like I did a game a couple of weeks ago, and it was like 51 straight. Now, they've given up over 100 yards rushing, but not to one individual.
Yeah.
So, but it was like 51 straight games without giving up 100-yard rusher. So, they're stout. They have big athletic defensive line, really big and athletic across the board, and they've got a great rotation. So they legitimately rotate 8 guys through. So there's a big time rotation there. You're always playing against somebody who's fresh, and they're really good from a gap discipline standpoint. All 3 levels of their defense. This is the most now. I'm just talking about the teams that I've covered this year for Fox, and the Saints being one of those teams. Without question, the most talented team the Broncos will face on both sides of the ball. Obviously, Kansas City's, their own animal on the offensive side of the ball. But both sides of the ball, this is the most talented team that the Broncos will face all year.
That's a scary thought coming up on Sunday here. Last one for you, Mark. We were expecting Drew Brees when the schedule came out, but Taysom Hill comes in. Vic Fangio said that they were running pretty much their same offense last week. What did you see from the Saints?
Yeah, I mean, like Taysom Hill's, he's an accomplished quarterback. He's just a unique individual because he can play the Y tight end, the U tight end. He plays the F or slot receiver. He'll play fullback, he'll play tailback, and then he'll play quarterback. So, and he's the punt protector on special teams. And I mean, the guy is a freak show athlete. Running the same offense, yes. But from an execution standpoint, now he was, I think, 18 of 23, but he had a couple of really bad balls that he threw that were complete, which was like, complete total underthrows on some things. But they used a lot more of individual route concepts on the backside. So into the boundary with Michael Thomas, it was X slant or X curl or X dig or whatever. So there was a lot more just basic individual route concepts as opposed to multiple layered routes. And they're running the layered routes on one side and they're just staying more to the X side, to the individual side. And I understand why. Michael Thomas is damn good. And it's just an easier thing to read that way. So they did a little bit more of that than they would necessarily with Drew Brees. But, for the most part, I think the offense didn't change a whole lot. And Taysom is a guy that normally is just a package guy for them. But obviously they felt really comfortable making him the full-time starter, and it paid off. I mean, they played really well. They just have a ton of talented players. There's no question about that.
They won 7 consecutive games here. So looking forward to things playing out on Sunday. Mark, thanks for spending some time with me. Appreciate it.
Absolutely, Phil. Take care, buddy.